gentlemen, may I present Team COVID-19. Step into the mic in the studio is Dr. Laws, our beloved CMO, Medical Chief of Staff, Dr. Wilkinson, and Mr. Lesroy Williams. Team COVID-19 on the front line, coming to you in Calypso rhyme. So sit back, relax, and listen to what they have to say and the role they want you to play. Easy.
Early in January this year, our federation woke up in fear because a little virus out there in Wuhan was slowly making its way to our land. They say its name was SARS Corona, and our lives it planned to devour. So we're here to come up quickly with a little plan to save our beautiful nation.
Then plan they will get. Because of people's lives we have to protect. Close down the airport and send back them big tourist ships so we could focus on this pandemic. Mr. MCS, I'm begging you please, as I pray to God from down on my knees. Now let's get all our hospitals and staff in order to battle this corona.
Madam COO, I hear you loud and clear. We will win this fight, don't worry, don't fear. I'll sound the alarm and get all hands on deck. This war we will win and our people protect. To win this war we must flatten the curve, but don't overwhelm the nurses and doctors. Personal responsibility you must take indeed if we are to succeed.
Cover your mouth, we say cover your nose. This will stop the spread to those who are close. Lock yourself inside during the curfew. Under quarantine, to thine own self be true. Wash from your elbows down to your hands. With soap and water, it's a simple plan. If you follow these simple instructions daily, from this virus we'll soon be free. Easy.
Now I know what you're thinking, but I only assisted with the recording. This song is not my composition, but brought to me by Dr. Wilkinson. Between Lesroy and the CMO, they've come up with this great kaiso. So after whipping COVID-19 behind, there'll be Sugar Mass 49. Easy.
Good afternoon and welcome to the National Emergency Operations Center COVID-19 Daily Briefing for the 18th of April 2020. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate that you join us from day to day so that you can be updated on the latest information with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic in St. Kitts and Nevis. A special welcome to the media, our colleagues, for joining us, I would like to also say a special invitation to Permanent Secretary Ron Dublin Collins, Medical Chief of Staff at the Joseph N. France General Hospital, Dr. Cameron Wilkinson, Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Hazel Laws, Superintendent of Police, Cromwell Henry, and President of the St. Kitts and Nevis Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Mrs. Giselle Matthews, and also Mr. Abdias Samuel, who is chair of the COVID-19 National Task Force. COVID-19 does not discriminate. What it is teaching us is that we too must not discriminate, and that we must eliminate from us all forms of discrimination, whether on race, sex, gender, age, whatever form of discrimination that we practice, we must eliminate it. Additionally, with the state of emergency and so many curfews, there are some benefits to be had. For example, spending more time with our families. We can also learn to do new things, like learning a new language, for example. So it affords us time to do things that we would not normally do. I would like to invite to the podium Permanent Secretary Ron Dublin Collins to give us an update on the Utilities and Transport Committee for the NEOC. Permanent Secretary Collins.
Citizens and residents, good afternoon. I wish to begin by expressing our highest commendations and profound gratitude to all who are serving on the front lines of COVID-19 on the National Task Force, the NEOC, the HEOC, NEMA Security, and in all the other essential services. These are persons who are working and sacrificing much to ensure that we have the essential care, supplies, and well-needed services. The essential workers that I represent today are putting in tremendous effort to ensure that core services remain available. This includes water services, transport and maritime affairs, SCEDEC, solid waste, the cable, and our telephone service providers, Digital and Flow, and of course, public works. I must also recognize the many staff who support them in the field. They too are on the front lines of this pandemic as critical infrastructure workers who are fully involved in safety and the community well-being. While many are being told to stay at home, these workers have a responsibility during the challenges posed by this pandemic to continue their operations, potentially putting their own lives in danger. Some of these people work behind the scenes without the public even realizing how essential they are to keeping our society functioning. Our partners are out in the field ensuring a continued supply of electricity services, and others are maintaining and restoring telephone and internet services. Our partners understand the vulnerability of our communication systems to extreme weather for the hurricane season and have developed plans to prevent and prepare for disruptions to their system. The emergency preparedness processes and resources for all institutions on this committee are adequate for now. Our plans allow for effectively mobilize, direct, coordinate, prevent, and mitigate for preparedness and response. We have developed a resource list of all transport needs that will be available for us during a disaster, even now. Arrangements were made for the release of vehicles, equipment to facilitate work that is required also. I would like to thank all government ministries and statutory corporations and other institutions for making available vehicles that are serving the needs of the response teams. We are, of course, soliciting others, including private companies, to lend your assistance in this area to ensure that we can continue to respond adequately to needs as they arise. Our emergency plan helps us to cope with transportation requirements at both national and sectoral levels. We have also successfully sought assistance of drivers to operate vehicles when needed. Our hardworking employees of the Water Services Department are working around the clock to ensure maintenance of our water supply. A hotline was established, as you would have heard, 762-0099, and the department has been responding, providing corrective and remedial services to the many callers. The continued supply of water is key to fighting COVID-19, and we again call on our citizens and residents to treat this precious resource with the importance it deserves and do your part to conserve it. The cable. Full remote monitoring has been implemented and will be in place by May. They have standby generators now in place, and they have provided direct fiber connectivity installed for NEMA and ZIZ. However, they are awaiting the arrival of satellite phones that will further assist us in our needs when the hurricane season begins. They have utilized CNN and the visitor channels, advertising slots to broadcast NEOC and Ministry of Health infomercials. They have been using video crawl on CNN to provide contact details for the NEOC and COVID-19 Social Security relief. COVID-19 information is frequently disseminated via social media and other media outlets. We like to express our appreciation to the cable for their efforts. SCELEC is at stage 3 of their COVID-19 operations plan. Operators are working to man the power plant on a 24-hour basis, and they're working to ensure that the engines are in good running conditions. They have engineers and mechanics who work daily in small rotating teams to tend to any maintenance that is required. Emergency crew and dispatch are on duty from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. And for emergency, you may call 465-2013 or 600 for assistance. To date, SCELEC has ably responded to several situations, including a burnt pole in the Deptba area and a faulty transformer in Sir Gillies. SCELEC management continues to meet to establish a high level of readiness for the hurricane season. Public Works have also been doing their part. The senior management of Public Works Department has begun to review their plans for hurricane preparedness for the 2020 season. Public Works has started the inspection of and the clearing of guts and storm drains, including in the vicinity of our bridges and culverts. Special mention must be made of the recent construction of the Wash Gut Bridge. We are also undertaking channelization work at College Street Gut using Ballion baskets. We continue to ensure that our pieces of heavy equipment are available and serviceable. The Public Works Department is providing critical support to COVID-19 Task Force and the NEOC. Our Vehicle Maintenance Division, Facilities Maintenance Division, and Roads Division are among those that have been assisting. Digicel has not been left out. Digicel's Disaster Preparedness Committee was activated since early February 19, and their Crisis Management Committee was activated in March 1st. Their broadband customers are receiving internet upgrades of basic package, and TV customers are receiving MoviePack, will receive MoviePack from April 1st. Digicel is aggressively monitoring their networks for any voice or data congestion, and they are seeking additional temporary spectrum to ensure seamless continued connectivity. Solid Waste has also been very active, and we are certainly appreciative of their efforts. They continue to work on the completion of the hurricane plans for this year, and in my next briefing, I will bring you a more detailed position with the solid waste. However, they have implemented a schedule to ensure the continued collection of household garbage, and we are indeed grateful for that. I want to report on one final area, and that has to do with a meeting that was held today by the Minister with responsibility for transport, the Honorable Ian Patches Liebert. He convened a special meeting of the Safety, Traffic Safety and Public Service Drivers Board. And that meeting lasted some 2.5 hours. It was very engaging. We had previously met with members, quite a number of members and representatives of the bus associations, both in St. Kitts and Nevis, and discussions have been very fruitful. In the new arrangement, under the new regulations, there has been adjustments, and I believe the police will speak to that. However, in these 2.5 meetings, we were able to address several concerns of both our taxi drivers and our bus operators. In attendance were also senior government officials in tourism, national security, police, and even members of the medical profession, the National Task Force for COVID, and NEMO. The leaders of the bus associations here in St. Kitts, West Line, East Line, Liamiga Association, the St. Peter's Association, and the Nevis Bus Association were very present as we sought to be very engaging and inclusive in this meeting. A number of recommendations were made, which will be considered by the Honourable Minister in his submission to Cabinet. However, the bus drivers and taxi drivers collectively have given their commitment to the arrangements that are in place, which will be outlined by the police. They have given their commitment to ensure their own welfare and that of their families, as well as the welfare and health of the passengers who they will take from place to place. Given their commitment, we're asking the general public to work with the bus drivers in terms of the efforts that will be made to protect you and to protect themselves. These efforts seek not to be punitive, but to assist us in the overall fight against COVID. When these new regulations are being implemented by the bus drivers, we are asking the general public to support the effort as far as possible and to seek to make things easier for the bus drivers in implementing the new regulations. We believe that we have the support and the commitment of the bus drivers and the Taxi Association as we continue the dialogue to seek to address the areas of needs and concerns, and we look forward for an improved way forward as we are now in some areas relaxed in some of the regulations, but we expect that we will still safeguard our health and well-being. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Permanent Secretary Ron Dublin Collins. I now invite the President of the St. Kitts and Nevis Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Mrs. Giselle Matthews, to address us. Mrs. Matthews.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to viewers, those streaming live, and radio listeners. Again, I would like to thank the COVID-19 Task Force and the authorities for including the Chamber of Industry and Commerce in consultations that take place regarding the business operations in the Federation and the logistics that helps to schedule these operations of the supermarkets, the small shops, and the rural area district shops and the wholesalers that have been supplying and ensuring that you have a good and steady food supply throughout our curfew and lockdown periods. The Chamber also would like to thank SCASPA regarding the cargo operations at the port, updating us on notice and guidelines that have issued regarding the management of the imported goods at the port. This has certainly helped us to facilitate the trade and business in the Federation and ensure that the essential goods, such as food and pharmaceutical products, were made available to the public in a more seamless manner without any undue delays. I also like to thank the IRD, Mr. Gift in our Revenue Department, for offering the flexibility in the payment of VAT to businesses far and wide on the island that became due last week. That has helped, did help to alleviate a lot of questions and concerns that persons had, knowing that April 15th was the due date for VAT, and in some instances, the date for the tax returns for those that had closed their financial years on December 31st, 2019. We'll continue to work with the IRD and also help to alleviate challenges that many members and in general the business community are facing. Due to consultations that we've had between the authorities, we've been able to help with improvements of the overall business community, especially those of the essential services providers, the banking sector, and the bank's hours have helped to facilitate persons needing to visit the bank, especially our senior citizens who are not as affair with the online services and do not have the gadgets and the know-how to access. So we're asking the public to please be patient with the senior citizens, especially when they're in the lines at the supermarkets and in the banks, giving preference to them so that they can get in and out as fast as possible, especially seeing that they are more prone to being infected by COVID-19 and would have a higher level of complications if they were to, unfortunately, get infected. So please, the general public needs to be aware, and the young people to be, more compliant when it comes to the older folks. In order to generate factual information, what the Chamber has done, and I think I spoke on this last week, we finally completed our economic impact survey, and that was circulated yesterday to our general membership. And this is to give us a good insight into the impact that our members and the business community in general will feel from the effects of COVID-19 over the next several months into their financial years. We'd like to offer that to those who aren't members of the Chamber, who feel that their businesses, they need some guidance, or their businesses are really going to be suffering, not sure if they'll make it through. We are willing to facilitate that survey to you also, and you can complete it and send it back out. At the end, I will give you some details on contact information so that you can reach out to the Chamber's Executive Director if you feel the need that you'd like to complete this form if you were involved in the tourism sector especially, or a spin-off from that sector. This information we'll take to government for discussion. We will have the facts, we'll have the data, and this will help government along with ourselves and any other agencies towards various actions that can help facilitate the continuity of business as we face the next several months, which will be extremely challenging, including employment. One of the areas that the Chamber would like to speak about is the impact on employment has been horrific. And it has not been easy for our members, CEOs, managers, supervisors, to have to lay persons off. It's one of the most challenging periods I think we've had, to sit with board members, myself included, and having to lay off your employees. It's a very difficult time for all of us, a very emotional time, and also a time when the business has to direct you, and you have to separate the emotion, and the business decides, and the pandemic makes the decisions. So this is a very difficult time for everyone. So we just wanted to say that we are all in this together, because we as owners and business executives, we don't know if our businesses would also pull through. So it's a double-edged sword. But I would like to say that as the health authorities continue to evaluate the situation, and we trust them, we have been guided by them, and as it relates to and when the sectors will open, we'll continue to be guided by the COVID-19 task force, Dr. Hazel Laws, Dr. Cameron Wilkinson, and we will do everything in our power to continue to follow those guidelines and those protocols within the business sector and communicate that using this platform and our our website also. I'd like to just say about tomorrow, I think it's important that I speak to Monday, when those businesses that have permissions to reopen, and I think I'm going to leave that part to the AG so I don't give any incorrect information as to the particular sectors that can open. What I would like to say on behalf of the Chamber, that it is critical that you read Section 16, because Section 16 in the regulation speaks to the protocols and the guidelines in social distancing. So it's critical and important that those businesses that are allowed to open, we are asking all our membership and the wider business community to ensure you are ready to open. Do not open your doors if you're allowed on Monday or next week to reopen, and you need a few hours in the morning before opening, put a sign on your door, so you'll be open at midday, 1 o'clock, 10 o'clock, whatever it is, until you're ready. Mark your floors 6 feet apart from your cash points. Mark your floors around the area where persons line to go to the cash. Make sure no one comes in without a mask. Make sure you have a sanitizing station or a sanitization application at your front before persons come into your door, and do the same with the trolley or baskets. These are protocols that you must follow. You're going to be inspected. There's a social and physical distance compliance task force, and they might pop in unexpectedly. And if you do not pass, you might be closed. And you do not need to call the Chamber, because you need to follow the rules and you need to exercise those. So our best advice is be ready. When you are ready, then you open your door. Don't go in, open your door, and then try to get ready. Just, you need to communicate to your staff. You need to have a very short, brief meeting explaining what is expected of them, and I think then you can be ready. If you need some guidance, our phone number is 465-2980. Our Executive Director, Mr. Andrew Satney, will take calls. Our actual offices, we're working from remotely. Our 3 staff are working from their homes at the moment, but we are willing to answer questions. Our website and Facebook page is sknchamber.com. We've been uploading the more recent documents there. We also have some guidelines posted on various hygiene techniques which we put out weeks ago. So please refer to those so that you can get some guidance and other guidelines on your own business on how you can manage through these very tough periods. Mr. Samuel asked me to speak a bit about yesterday and how the last 2 days went in terms of the zoning and the supermarkets. Based on what I know in terms of the flow, it seems that it was better than the previous week, and I assume, and I would want to say factually that a lot of that had to do with the replenishment and restocking of the stores, the small shops around the island. Last week we got the go-ahead, and the wholesalers were able to replenish, drive around the island and take care of those small shops in the rural areas so that they can have the necessary cargo to sell on Thursday and Friday. So we believe that did help, and that did help to alleviate some of the pressures on the supermarkets. Zone 1 on Thursday continues to be a larger customer base, it seems, and so the lines were especially long, but people moved along, and the forces really helped to enforce that 6-foot social distancing outside and managing that process, which is critical. So thank you to them again. Zone 2 on Friday, where the lines again were long in the morning, but really afternoon the lines had diminished and had flowed much shorter. Flow was quicker. However, inside the supermarkets, I think between 3:30 and when the closure at 5, what is happening is the essential workers come to shop, and the time is winding down, and what we find is happening is they are allowing the doors open, and so the crowds inside the stores are tighter, and so the social distancing isn't so great inside. Hopefully next week, with us being able to have 4 days of the shopping, we anticipate, and longer hours, that the social distancing inside the store would automatically be managed much better, because we won't have the crowds like before. So again, I'd just like to thank everyone, and we're here to answer any questions if you have. and please follow the protocols and guidelines going into next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Matthews. I now invite Superintendent Cromwell Henry, Divisional Commander for District A, to update us on matters pertaining to law enforcement.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Good afternoon to viewers to this particular broadcast. Now, this afternoon, I would go through some aspects of the new regulation that has been recently published. I will not go through everything today, but over the next few days, I will go through aspects of it so that we may understand it better. But before I go into the regulation, I just want to give an update as to some law enforcement activities in terms of policing the curfew. Over the last 24 hours, there were 4 arrests of persons who were in breach of the curfew. This brings to date the total number of persons arrested to 77. As I mentioned earlier, new regulations have been published, and which provides a gradual opening of business activities, which we have been all asking for some time. However, the basic framework is still in place to prevent the spread of the COVID-19. So, for example, businesses and offices are still encouraged to continue to operate or allows their employees to work remotely from home utilizing virtual means. So if your business has the capability of operating remotely or virtually, you are encouraged to continue doing that. Do not open the doors because you can. Subject to subsection 1, where a business is able to continue its operations by its employees practicing social distancing and physical distancing in accordance with the provisions of the regulations, it may operate. So this is very broad. If your business is able to continue operations by having your employees practicing social distancing, physical distancing, in accordance with the provisions, and I would outline what those provisions for social distancing are later, you may operate. I was asked a question earlier about hair salons and barber shops. Can they operate? Because, you know, the barber has to come in contact with the client at a very close range. And so I was advised that those businesses will be permitted to continue, provided that the barber or the hairstylist and the client both wear masks. So mask is very important in this situation where the customer and the business operator cannot maintain that 6 feet distance. The other clients who are waiting, however, they must maintain the 6 feet distance. So you cannot have the barber shop crowded or the hair salon crowded with persons who are waiting. You have to minimize the number of persons who are in your salon or barber shop at any one particular time, so that the social distancing protocols can be observed. But yes, barbers and hair salons can operate, provided that masks are worn and that there's no crowding in your place of business. And I would just outline what the social and distancing protocols are. According to Regulation 7, any establishment that is permitted to operate pursuant to the provisions of these regulations shall make the necessary arrangements to facilitate social distancing and physical distancing, and shall ensure that all customers and staff maintain physical distancing of at least 6 feet in or outside their business, if in a line to enter the business. And B, determine the number of persons that may be permitted in the establishment at any one time, by permitting one person for every 30 square feet of store space. So the bigger the business, the more floor space you have, the more persons you could allow, but it's one person per 30 feet of store space, 30 square feet of store space. C, you must place distance markers at least 6 feet apart, indicating where such customer must stand on a line at a checkout point or other line. So where persons have to queue within the business, you must have placed markers that are 6 feet apart to indicate where persons should stand, so that persons do not misjudge what 6 feet is. You must place distance markers 6 feet apart on the outside of the establishment, indicating where customers must stand while waiting to enter the establishment. In other words, you are responsible for any queue, both inside or outside of your premises, if persons are waiting to enter. So you must have markers to indicate the 6 feet spacing. Now, businesses can only open on the days of limited operation. So, what are the days of limited operation? The days of limited operation are the days where when the curfew is relaxed. So, for example, starting this morning at 6 a.m., we are under a 24-hour curfew, so that no business should be operating today. Sunday, same thing, 24-hour curfew. Monday 20th, limited day of operation. You can operate between the hours of 6 a.m. and 7 p.m. Tuesday the 21st, a limited day of operation. Businesses are permitted to operate between 6 a.m. and 7 p.m. Thursday and Friday, Thursday 23rd and Friday 24th, limited days of operation, same hours, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. From 7 p.m. nightly, there will be a curfew. Persons will not be permitted to be out. And on the days that are not limited curfew days, there will be a 24-hour curfew. The shelter-in-place provision still applies. Only persons who are essential workers, only persons who are required to work under Regulation 6, that is if you're a security guard, if you're medical personnel, or if you have to travel for medical emergencies, only those persons are permitted to be out during the hours of curfew. So I would end here at this point, and I would bring you up to date further tomorrow with other provisions of the new regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Henry, for that update. I now invite our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Hazel Laws, to provide us with the COVID-19 situation report. Dr. Laws.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, and a pleasant good afternoon to everyone. As of today, Saturday, April 18th at 3 p.m., the World Health Organization reports 2,164,111 confirmed cases of COVID-19 globally, with 146,198 deaths. To date, 247 persons have been tested, with 14 confirmed positive, 206 confirmed negative, and 27 results pending. We have 0 deaths to date. There are currently 0 persons quarantined in a government facility, while 79 persons are quarantined at home. 14 persons remain in isolation, while 613 persons have been released from quarantine. Despite our recent focus on efforts at decreasing the spread of coronavirus and preventing the overwhelming of our emergency medical system, and by extension our health system, we should not forget other medically vulnerable persons within our population. Individuals with uncontrolled hypertension, diabetics with persistently elevated blood sugars, patients with heart disease, which include patients with heart failure and known coronary artery disease, renal patients, and patients who are immunocompromised, such as patients with lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, should all continue to pay special attention to their ongoing symptoms and seek immediate treatment if they feel that they are not doing well. Patients with chest pain, chest pressure, increased shortness of breath, excessive swelling of the legs, and unusual right-sided abdominal pain, visual disturbances, and weakness of any extremity that is of new onset should call their general practitioner or healthcare provider or call 911 and get to the emergency room of the hospital without hesitation. We do not want to focus on preventing the spread of the virus and neglect patients with other non-COVID-19 related medical emergencies. These patients should be vigilant, especially when they live alone. Make sure your neighbors and close family members keep in constant contact. I also want to add that I'm hoping that neighbors and close family members would be intentional and keep in contact with older adults who live alone, especially those with underlying chronic medical conditions. If there is any hint of changes to your usual medical status, you should seek help without delay. Maintaining the overall health of the people of the Federation continues to be our individual and collective responsibility. I want to remind us all that national statistics and other COVID-19 related information can be found at the official website www.covid19.gov.kn, the St. Kitts Health Promotion Unit Facebook page, and the St. Kitts Health Promotion Unit YouTube channel. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Laws. Mr. Abdia Samuel, Chair of the COVID-19 National Task Force, will now address us. Welcome, Mr. Samuel.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Greetings to all. Tune in via radio, television, via the internet, and otherwise. Bringing to your attention the update for today, Saturday, 18th of April. And this will be our 19th daily report from the NEOC. 311 hotline would have processed a total of 38 calls, 29 on St. Kitts and 9 on Nevis. 911 would have processed a total of 48 calls. The St. Kitts NEOC would have processed 11 calls, and they are further broken down into requests for permission, 7, health-related, 2, assistance, 2. The EOC on Nevis would have processed a total of 14 calls. The Regional Security System, otherwise known as RSS, would have visited the island and collected samples to transport to CARFOR during the week. The days which they were here were Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday gone. A number of repatriation flights were carried out today. 3 flights out of the Vance Armory International Airport. One was to San Juan, and this flight would have left with 6 passengers. One was to St. Thomas, and this flight would have left with 4 passengers. And one was to Barbados with a total of 3 passengers. I want to take this opportunity to thank a private citizen, a senior public servant, in the name of Miss Elrita Simpson Brown, who has informed me, and by extension the team, the National Working Group, that she has been moved by the work that is being done, and she also has been moved as the person responsible for processing the Poverty Alleviation Program submissions. Processing over 500 applications and counting, she has reached into her personal pocket and contributed 5,000 EC dollars to be used to bring about relief to our most vulnerable in our community, in particular those who are struggling. I want to thank Ms. Elrita Simpson Brown for stepping up to the plate and supporting our national response through this very generous donation. Also, we had a very fruitful discussion today with the bus drivers, and by tomorrow, hopefully midday, we will be putting out a PSA, a video PSA, whereby persons can look at what is expected of them before, during, and after their trip on a public transport. I want to thank the Honorable Minister in the Ministry of Transportation, and also Permanent Secretary Mr. Ron Dublin Collins for their active participation in this meeting this morning. Dr. Lars was also able to join us, and I was very moved and motivated by the contributions of the bus operators, the Taxi Association, and others who were present in the Ministry of Tourism. I think the messaging has reached everyone, and everyone are playing their part. Now, we go into a different phase as of Monday. With that said, I want to appeal to everyone to adhere to the advices and also the recommendations being given by the police force and the Ministry of Health. We are going to give you time to put the necessary measures in place. After that, we are going to evaluate you, and after the evaluation process, then the task force that is being formed is going to come and do the necessary checks to ensure enforcement of these protocols. It is necessary. I also want to commend the Honorable Attorney General as Mitigation Council Minister for his active participation in this process, being here every day, working with us, engaging in a number of preparatory measures, in particular for this pandemic, but also as we are approaching the hurricane season. I have met with the 10 national subcommittee chairs, which are directors of government departments and also permanent secretaries. They have given me a fair report, and I do look forward for our next meeting where they will have a more comprehensive report. I also want to thank the district managers for our volunteer mechanism. They too met with us, and they are doing the necessaries to prepare their communities and their villages for the upcoming 2020 Atlantic hurricane season. I just want our citizens to note that if the virus, if the pandemic persists and it goes into the hurricane season, let us all prepare for the duplicity of hazard. So we're going to have that double whammy of hazards of the pandemic and the hurricane season, which is being forecasted to be above average. Therefore, let us start to prepare for that as well. It is critical and it's important that we start early planning. So therefore, continue to do the necessary Let us control ourselves with the shopping. We have opened up some more for you to be able to have more days. Business is going to open from Monday. So therefore, just exercise the necessary physical and social distancing measures and start to prepare for the long term in terms of the hurricane season. I want to thank you, Mr. Williams, for the opportunity, and I look forward for the questions that are going to be raised.
Thank you, Mr. Samuel. We will get right into the questions. I have seen on social media that the British Virgin Islands have been declared COVID-19 free, and that their 24-hour curfew is lifted. With all the success that the CMO and the medical chief of staff claim that we are having, why are we so far behind the successes in the British Virgin Islands? That question is for Dr. Wilkinson. These other three questions are for Dr. Laws. Can COVID-19 be spread through coins and banknotes? How can I safely grocery shop in this time of COVID-19? How do we wash fruits and vegetables in this time of COVID? So we'll have Dr. Wilkinson first, and then Dr. Laws.
Thank you very much, Lesroy. I actually saw the information and was tagged by it on Facebook also, and my first response was, if that is true, then very good. But then I decided to do my research into the story. And I think the best way for me to answer the question is to refer to the address that was given to the BVI by the Premier Andrew Foy, on the 17th of April 2020 at 7:29 p.m., actually, because knowledge is power. And he basically said that he was given an address to them as they were coming out of a 24-hour lockdown that would end on Monday. And he said that the purpose of the recent 24-hour lockdown was to protect the people of the Virgin Islands from COVID-19 and to detect any pockets of community spread. He said that that decision was made and it was a rational decision based on advice given to him by his health professionals. And had they not introduced those measures, they would have had over 3,700 persons infected with COVID-19 in the British Virgin Islands. He further went on to say that as of Monday, April the 20th, they would be relaxing their curfew, such that the curfew would be from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. daily for the next 14 days. And since that, today, when I went back on the BVI site, I found that they actually had their first death from COVID-19. And I want to extend my sympathies to the persons of the British Virgin Islands. I know a lot of us have family and friends in the British Virgin Islands. We've been very connected closely for many years, and I want to extend my sympathies to them. But in summary, therefore, the BVI is not COVID-free, and they are still on the curfew. And we've said before in previous discussions that each government has to do what is best for their own nation, and that different countries at different stages in the epidemic or pandemic. And so what goes for Peter doesn't go for Paul, I think.
I now invite Dr. Laws.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Williams, for those questions. All right, so the question with respect to the spread of COVID-19 through the handling of coins and banknotes. Well, the evidence that to confirm or disprove the transmission of COVID-19 through the handling of coins and banknotes is still evolving. However, the Ministry of Health is recommending everyone that you should wash your hands thoroughly after handling coins and banknotes. Well, the main means of spread of COVID-19 is the transmission of viral-laden respiratory droplets from infected persons. And so if these droplets land on surfaces like banknotes and coins, they persist. And so you run the risk of picking up the infection from handling same. And so again, we recommend that individuals wash their hands thoroughly after handling banknotes and coins. Now, with respect to the safety of going to the grocery store. All right, so when I'm going to the grocery store, you can either wear a pair of disposable gloves, or you can ensure that you cleanse the handle of the cart, the shopping cart, or the basket. Now, once you've left the grocery store and reach home, make sure that you wash your hands thoroughly, and then again, wash your hands thoroughly after packing away the grocery items. Now, I remember seeing Sanjay Gupta, Dr. Gupta, on CNN. He went a step further, and he has advised that individuals can go the extra mile and utilize whatever cleaning agent and wipe down your grocery items before you pack away. And again, we recommend that you wash your hands after so doing. Now, the third question speaks to the washing of fruits and vegetables during this outbreak. And I think we can safely say that the recommendation stands the same even without a COVID-19 outbreak. Once you purchase fruits and vegetables, you need to wash them thoroughly. I utilize just ordinary salt water in terms of washing your lettuce and cucumber and whatever your fruits and vegetables. Whatever you usually utilize, make sure your fruits and vegetables are thoroughly washed before utilizing them. Thank you.
This question is from ZIZ, Jason Davis. The new regulations allow for the state of emergency to be extended for a period of up to 6 months. How often will Cabinet be returning to review the situation to decide if it should run the full course? And the second question from ZIZ, has any effort been made to look into reported cases of price gouging in the supermarkets?
Good afternoon to everyone. The new regulations came into force today, and they go for 1 week. These regulations have been put together with advice from the Chief Medical Officer and from the task force. They are reviewed regularly, and once they have been compiled, they normally get the sanction, the agreement of Cabinet. One would expect that as we gradually loosen the restrictions, and we have seen where we have moved from a partial curfew, limited restrictions, we are now talking about limited operations of business as we gradually open up. On Wednesday next week, there will be a full lockdown, and then we return to 2 days of limited operations. And one would expect that we will review how our citizens have adopted and adapted to this gradual loosening, to see whether we will continue on that path, whether there may be a time for more partial loosening or if we don't adhere to what we are doing, whether we may need to revert to a tightening up. But it is constantly under review, where our professional medical personnel will advise Cabinet. We have said 6 months as a board view, but we depend on our health professionals from week to week, from day to day, to advise us. It may be that in a few weeks that we get a different set of advice, whereby we may well be in a position to revoke the state of emergency that was introduced, the extension was introduced yesterday. The extension of the state of emergency yesterday to 6 months does not mean that St. Kitts and Nevis must be locked down for 6 weeks, 6 months. That's not what it means. It does not mean, even in terms of lockdown, that people have to be at home every day, or even at night curfews. It may well be that some days from now, some weeks from now, we may advise that we lift the partial, of course, the night curfews or the weekend curfews. But it's important for us to have in place restrictions to allow our health professionals to fight this COVID-19. I want to read, if you don't mind, Mr. Williams, and forgive me, something that was sent to me today by a friend. And I think it's important for me just to read it. In 100 years ago, there was what is known as the Spanish flu. And some 50 million people died. And this was a little blurb that came from then. People grew sick of the social distancing measures as they dragged on into the summer of 1918, when the Great War, that is the First World War, from 1914 to 1918, that took more than 20 million people, finally ended in late November of 1918. People took to the streets to celebrate their good fortune. In the coming weeks after that, there was a second wave of the pandemic that killed more people than the war itself. It's not a game. And I thought I would just bring that to all of us. The question before is very instructive to Dr. Wilkinson, where the BVI seem to have been doing well. But today, we have seen a press release from the Ministry of Health in the BVI where they lost their first death today. Thank you very much.
Mr. Williams, thanks for allowing me to highlight another section of the emergency powers regulations, and I'm referring specifically to Section 4, working remotely from home. All businesses and offices may continue their business operations by allowing their employees to work remotely from home utilizing virtual means, unless those employees are permitted to work under Regulation 6 or are designated as being essential workers under Regulation 8. More specifically, I want us to note subsection 2. Senior persons, older persons, or persons in the pre-retirement age range, and persons with chronic underlying conditions should be given priority to work remotely from home. I want to add that senior, older persons and those with chronic underlying conditions, they have an increased risk of first developing COVID-19, and they are at an increased risk of developing the complications. And so, if at all possible, older persons with chronic underlying conditions should be given some priority in terms of working remotely from home. Thank you.
So I've been asked to answer the question on price gouging. First, what is price gouging? I think we need to determine that. Price gouging occurs when a seller increases the prices of goods and services or commodities to a level much higher than is considered reasonable. Usually this event takes place after a demand or supply shock. Common examples include price increases of basic necessities after a natural disaster. So we're not in a we're in a war, actually. We're in World War III, apparently, with a disease. But I said that because price gouging is, we brought it up before, it was raised last week. The Chamber has raised the matter, and we could do that officially with the consumer phase. That's the jurisdiction which an assignment like this would fall under, that they would have to go into the marketplace and do some spot checking throughout the supermarket chains and probably have a list of necessities that they could narrow down to and do a table and do some comparisons. The Chamber, that would be a conflict for the Chamber to get involved in that process. And so we leave that to the Consumer Affairs Department. However, I would like to say that sometimes we use a term loosely, and I think it's important that consumers also understand that. I've seen on Facebook and social media asking for online services, which the COVID-19 team has asked some of the businesses that are under our umbrella to involve in online services and deliveries, and there are customers complaining about the fee for delivery. Now, you can't expect to get that type of service, save yourself 5 hours in line, and not expect to pay something within reason for that service that is coming right to your door, whether it's directly through the supermarket or by an outside source, delivery source. So, and again, the prices in those areas have, they've expressed an increase they've seen online with the prices. Again, that business is probably a small business just starting out, a new business, and they probably have put on a small margin to cover their cost of the fuel and the manpower, etc., to make sure that they themselves can make this a viable option for them. So again, there might be something taking place that we are unaware of as a chamber, but we ask that the Consumer Affairs Department probably take that exercise next week and the following weeks when the supermarkets are not as crowded, and they'll have more time after this curfew and state of emergency to take that on and come back to the chamber and advise us accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Matthews. These questions are from Sugar City FM 90.3. I will ask the first two and then ask the others later. If a protocol has been set in the statutory rules and orders number 12 of 2020, Emergency Powers, COVID-19, number 4, in section 5, which states that the directive must be given by the Secretary of the Cabinet regarding the directive of civil servants going back out to work. Why is it not being followed? Can you please tell us what officially is the reopening date for the public sector and civil servants going out to work, seeing that the Human Resource Department of the government is sending out minutes stating that work resumes next week, Monday, and the Prime Minister did not address this? And what official measures will be put in place to facilitate safe operations? Question 2. Many countries around the world, or around the Caribbean, are encouraging electronic payments and online shopping in order to help stop the spread of the coronavirus. With these large crowds at the supermarkets and money contamination when it is exchanged from hand to hand. In light of this, can the supermarkets and food carrier services be opened for a limited time on curfew days, doing home delivery service with all the safety regulations in place and being followed, so that the population's needs can be met in a timely manner and not overexhaust the few delivery services operating within these limited hours a day? Attorney General, the first question.
I should just want to correct the questioner that we now have promulgated our follow-up to SRNO 12 of 2020. Today, SRNO 14 of 2020 has come into force. In those regulations, it clearly gave to the Cabinet Secretary the authority to determine what government departments, which public servants should be coming out to work. And it is for the Cabinet Secretary to inform and instruct and oversee the work that the Chief Personnel Officer does. If the Chief Personnel Officer has given directives to public servants, she would have done so on the advice and direction of the Cabinet Secretary. There is no conflict there at all. Just as we have looked at easing the private sector to allow them to come back to work gradually, so too will the public sector come back as necessary. I was in government headquarters yesterday, for instance, and I noted on every floor at strategic positions throughout the building were situated dispensers of hand sanitizers. They're all over the place. And it is a good example of how public buildings and private businesses need to, what they need to do going forward. As you come off the stairs or enter the door, there is a dispenser, either automatic, if you put your hand on it, or push it to have it, which you should use. And during the course of the day, if you're an employee, you should, from time to time, regularly use hand sanitizers if you do not visit a bathroom to wash your hands regularly, as has been advised by your health professionals. What the health professionals have also advised, and they are part of the new regulations, is that our government offices, as with our private sector businesses, should practice social distancing in terms of how you arrange your offices, so that if you have too many people working together in an office, you may have to rethink how you do that. If you can work on a shift system, if you can spread out your workers, if you are a clerical staff or have an office, we have a new normal that we have to now think about. Because as we feel that we have no one in the hospital, we have had no deaths in St. Kitts. It can change tomorrow. It can change next week. So we have to be conscious as we go forward that we are not out of the woods. We have done very well. And we need our people to think about how they behave, how they interact at work and with each other in social settings. It's very important that we do so. But as far as the public service, as department heads should be in communication with their members of staff, there should be discussions as how better to serve the public as they do the public work. Thank you. The other question I wanted just to say a quick word about it. What was it? Again? It had to do with delivery. I think it had to do with delivery. And this is something that has been discussed with the Chamber of Industry and Commerce and their members and with the task force. And our business community has responded excellently. They had initially understood that it could take some time to put in place the online payments, online purchasing systems, but they have responded. And they have worked in some cases with and given the opportunity to small businesses to do delivery. At this point in time, the advice of our professionals and the security forces is that we should not relax on total lockdown days. If there's a 24 total lockdown, we would not want at this point time to have anyone on the road delivering stuff. Deliveries, we believe, can be packed and be ready for delivery during the limited operations. And arrangements would have to be made for that to happen. I just want to make the point that the regulations speak still to shelter in place. And shelter in place means that on total lockdown, 24-hour lockdown, you should be at home. Shelter in place also should mean that on limited operations, if you do not have to, you should initially, at this time, still be at home. But if you have to go to work and you can make the arrangements to do so, you have to go. Practice social distancing. We're entering a new phase, and that balance, that way of our society understanding how to gradually get back to the new normal. We must do work, we must earn a living, but there must be that gradual moving back into it. For now, we would rather that deliveries be done during limited operations. For total lockdown, 24-hour lockdown, night lockdown curfews, there should be no operations other than for essential workers. Emergencies, electricity goes, water goes. Those are what should happen on total lockdown. We have relaxed a little bit. As we go forward and things become more normal, we'll have to review and determine if we can do more. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney General. These three questions are the last three questions for Sugar City FM 90.3. Should banks waive late payments and other fees where accounts become overdrawn as a result of the lockdown and where it creates pressure for persons to appear at the banks to make deposits just to avoid these fees? Can something be done for the boat owners if we have to go back to an extended lockdown period? Most of them do not have passes, and over the past 2 weeks, many suffered complications with their vessels. Boats are not like cars. They are like babies and need to be checked on frequently. Mooring lines need to be checked, as well as the bilges, and depending on the location of the vessel, the anchor lights would need to be checked as well. Can the superintendent of police or an appropriate agent update the public on how to renew their driver's license online, because persons are finding it difficult? And will the Inland Revenue apply updates to their site for ease of these new online applications arising? And the other question, can an elections be held during a state of emergency? Who would like to go first? Superintendent, and then the Attorney General, the elections, and the state of emergency.
Yes, the website for renewal of your driver's licenses or vehicle license is www.sknird.com. Then you would go to the e-licenses section and complete the registration process. Now, if you're having difficulty with that process, I've been given some numbers to advise the public to call, where the staff at Inland Revenue will assist you. The numbers to call are 662-8607 or 662-8675. You could call those numbers at any time if you're having difficulty registering or any other aspect of the website, and you will get assistance. I've been also advised that Beacon Insurance Company is also providing facility for their customers to renew their insurance policies online. You can call 664-8337 or email Kane, that is Kane, at beacon.co.tt. Send an email to that address, and you would be assisted in renewing your policy online. So now we have 3 companies that has indicated that it is possible to renew your insurance online: Nagico, National Insurance, and now Beacon. We advise persons to take advantage of these services and ensure that your vehicle and driver's licenses are valid.
The question regarding late fees at the bank, as far as I'm aware, the Bankers Association had released a press release weeks ago after they had a meeting, and what I would suggest to persons is each individual, depending on what bank you're dealing with, make the call to your contact person there. If you're business, it's a relationship manager or commercial manager. If individual, get someone on the phone. The waivers, they have announced certain waivers and late fee deferrals, and that is dependent on your bank. And deposits, yes, I think the banks do understand that you haven't been able to get there to do your commercial deposits. And so that is an option. The other option to pay, you can make the call, and if you are able to identify all the details of the bank, your bank account, your name, they'll ask you 1 or 2 personal questions that you can answer. They will take authority on their end and make a transaction for you over the telephone. So once they've done all those background checks, and be able to move money between accounts for you or to make a payment to your credit card. That's about as much as I'm able to say at this time, other than to call and make an inquiry yourselves, and they will assist you. Thank you.
I think I can add that the central bank had also indicated that they would be able to have some arrangements with banks when it comes to mortgages and so forth. So that something has been done, and as Mrs. Matthew has said, you need to call your bank and find out where this is. But I'm almost certain that there has been a policy in relation to late fees and suspension of interests as well as we have. I want to first, before I talk about this question of elections in the state of emergency, just to speak a little bit about boats. We have put in these new regulations, the easing of that, where next week you have some 4 days where the ferry will operate. As with the bus and taxis, they would be able to do limited operations, so too with the ferries between St. Kitts and Nevis. And the Commission of Police has been able to grant some exemptions where it's absolutely necessary to do so. A case would have to be made that if it is that your boat is sinking or has serious problems, the police has not been harsh in being able to grant, in certain exceptional cases, permission for people to look after their property. As far as the question of state emergency and elections goes, those of you who would have listened to the House of Assembly yesterday, the Parliament, I think it's clearly settled that Parliament automatically dissolves on the 14th of May this year. So in about 4 weeks' time, the Parliament comes to an end. It is also a matter of the Constitution that 90 days after Parliament dissolves, the time given for there to be an election. I should state that the question of when election is held, whether before Parliament dissolves or during that period of 90 days, the Prime Minister has the sole authority to advise His Excellency, the Governor General, as to when something like that would happen and set that date. But we are talking about nearly 120 days to go. And we are in a very, very fluid situation. The first case for St. Kitts and Nevis, confirmed case of COVID, was announced some 23 days ago. We do not know what will happen in 7 days, or much less 120 days. And so we are fluid. The Constitution requires that there should be an election in 120 days. We would hope and expect that long before that we would get advice from the medical practitioners that it's easy to ease. It is time to ease some further work. At this point in time, campaigns cannot be held at night, clearly, because there are night curfews. And whereas our Constitution very specifically gives each of us the right to assemble, to have to go to political meetings, the state of emergency allows regulations so that for public health purposes, we do not come close to each other and have a potential to transmit the COVID disease, that is, virus that is here with us. So that it is premature for us to determine when an election would be. And like I say, it's for the Prime Minister to determine if so. Again, I will say the Constitution very clearly says Parliament dissolves on May 14th. there are 90 days in which that the election can be called. State of emergency is something separate. That's something different. And at this point, we do not know whether it will be in force in 120 days or not, but that is something that we'll have to deal with when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney General. This question is for Superintendent Henry. There seems to be a contradiction with the 6 feet rule in your mentioning of barbershops and salons. While you mention that persons in the barbershops as clients can maintain 6 feet when they're in the shop, how is this possible when the contact is so close between the barber and the client? Jarvis Brown from Vaughan Radio. I have seen, based on information, that Greenland has no confirmed cases of the virus. They had 11, but all 11 cases recovered with no deaths. What is it that they are doing differently? And is it possible for us in St. Kitts and Nevis to perhaps adopt the measures that have worked for them? And this one, in terms of people who are being paid, the PAP program and the relief fund, if they don't have direct banking, how will the government facilitate those persons? And this final question, what are the projected numbers for the number of individuals infected and possible deaths for St. Kitts and Nevis based on epidemiological models that are being used? Who is going to take those questions?
All right. Thank you for that question. I'm happy to clear the air on that particular subject. Now, it is not practical to have social distancing in every aspect of what we do. When you go to the supermarket, when you go to the checkout, to the cashier, the checkout, the cashier's space is not 6 feet. You're still within the 6 feet of the cashier. But there are other precautions that you can take to minimize the risk. As I mentioned, you can wear a mask, or you should wear a mask, because that is mandatory. We ask that businesses not allow persons within their premises without masks. So both the hairdresser or the barber and the client should wear masks. They should practice good hand hygiene. Clean your hands regularly, clean the equipment, clean the seat. Practice good hygiene generally within the premises, and wear your mask, and that would be a good substitute for the social distancing. Now, in terms of the other clients who are waiting, they could maintain the social distance among themselves, but in terms of the barber and the client, that would not be possible, so other measures would have to be taken. Wear the mask, good hand hygiene, and clean your equipment.
Yes, Greenland has a few COVID cases. We do have a few also, and the same measures that they're using in Greenland, which is closing the borders, social distancing, hand hygiene, is the same measures that we're using here. As I said, however, different countries at different stages in this disease, and we can't compare what's happening in Greenland as to the number of cases and what's happening here.
Thank you.
Regarding the use of modeling to predict numbers, all right, so generally speaking, 20 to 70% of any given population can be impacted by the COVID-19 virus. In other words, 20 to 70% of the population can become infected by the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Based on the evidence or the science that's available to date, 40% of these individuals will experience mild infection. Some may even walk around with the virus and not have any symptoms whatsoever. 40% will have or will experience moderate disease with even the development of pneumonia or infection of the lungs. 15% will experience severe disease requiring hospitalization for anywhere between 3 to 6 weeks. And approximately 5% of those impacted will experience critical illness and even admission to the intensive care unit.
Thanks to all of you for those questions. This is the last question for the day, and it is for the Attorney General. Section 6C of the new regulations seems to suggest that it is the Commissioner of Police who will decide which businesses can open on partial curfew days, beginning next Monday and Tuesday. How will other business owners and the public at large know which businesses, other than supermarkets and banks, etc., that will be allowed to open by the Commissioner? This really needs clarification.
Thank you for that question. Look, we have been in a position where we have been locked down, we have had a limited curfew, and we are now gradually easing. And so we have given a framework that has been discussed with our Chief Medical Officer and her team. The police have had some input. The business community have been talking with us. And the idea fundamentally, and their individuals have been calling to ask about their businesses. And the idea is that we want to ease back into operations. There are some people, for instance, I can speak to sole practitioners, lawyers, who can work from home, but who may need to go to the office to collect files. And so there would be no restriction on somebody like that to do so. There are some businesses, say, like if you are on 4th Street and you have a small closed operation, will you have a sanitizer, a dispenser at your door? Will you allow 1 or 2 people to come in at a time? Will you restrict that operation? Will you do this type of things that Dr. Laws has been speaking about in terms of social distancing? If you have, say, a store, say like Mrs. Matthews, at the industrial site where she sells materials, office materials and supplies, and clearly she can accommodate 5 people at one time without them being in each other's face and practice social distancing. So she can put hand sanitizers available, and during the course of the day, she may have an office attendant wipe down those areas that people come in touch with. The new normal will be that we have now to plan our businesses to be able to gradually get back where we have less people in our establishment at the same time, if they used to be cramped. We have to get back to that point where we keep the place clean, and so there is not the potential for transmission of COVID. If you have doubts as to whether you are ready, the NEOC, the National Emergency Operating Center here, has put together a team that can come and visit, or you can discuss with them what you need to do. You can ask Dr. Laws, and she's very busy, but she may be able to assist. But I would say that you ask a question if you need to get back to work, that you can contact Commissioner Brandy, and he will have some member of his staff discuss it with you. We are not open for business fully, but we need to gradually get to that point where we slowly get back to normal. It's a work in progress, and we hope we get it right over time. Remember, we want to slow the transmission of COVID. It is likely that we'll get other cases. We hope we do so in a slow manner, that it does not take off and get away. Let me give you one example. We have learned this week, a couple of days ago, that Jamaica had a huge jump of confirmed cases. A call center that had hundreds of people that tested 75, and 65 out of those tested were found to be COVID, which more than like suggests that others in that call center may well have it, and they go off into their communities and can spread it. We have had discussions with our factory owners here, at least a couple of them, who have approached us, who have had emergency orders to help to build ventilators for hospitals in the US. And we have been very reluctant to do so. And so we set up a team headed by Mr. Samuel, Dr. Laws, the police, the Labor Department. They visited the factories to see if they had made arrangements for their workers, a limited number of workers to come in. And in some cases where there are 200 and 300 workers on the floor, they're able to establish a limited number. I think the number is either 30 or 40, with the spaced out workstations, where they can have shifts, where people, they have proper bathroom facilities. One of them had 11 bathrooms, and that type of stuff. And the idea was that whereas you might have 6 people on a desk, and clearly not having social distancing, the factory owner has complied with the recommendations of the task force. They have been visited, and there has been a green light for at least 2 of those businesses to do limited operations starting on Monday. That type of interaction is important for us as we get back to the new normal. If there's doubt, please call Mr. Samuel or somebody in the health team or the NEOC that you may know. I'm sure I don't want to overburden them, but the chamber has been very, very useful in all of this. They make recommendations and they will assist you. But it's important to know that we want people to slowly get back to work, but in a more controlled way than what we have been accustomed to. it's moving to that new normal, and hopefully we'll protect our people, but at the same time understand that people must earn a living, that they must be able to adapt to their new normal. I want to mention one last thing, Mr. Williams, and that is, in December, at our estimates debates in Parliament, the government made it very clear that we would want us to move to a digital economy. It was a major plank of our budget address by the Honorable Prime Minister. Last year, we engaged Deloitte Touche, the international firm, to assist us as to how we could move to a digital economy. The Ministry of Finance has been actively working so that government payments can be now made digitally. But other aspects of our work, our life, will move to that digital platform. How we share files, how we interact with each other. And so you build out the infrastructure, a very solid fiber network, so that our broadband can now operate. We increase speeds and expand the bandwidth so that they're not falling out. Our economy now has the chance, the opportunity for new players to come in and take advantage in this very difficult world we now live in. There are challenges, but there are also opportunities. And those who are nimble, who can adapt, will offer services to assist in this new normal. So that if we can have a way in which we reduce customers coming to us, clients coming to us, and operate in a way in which we can expand our base, we can expand our clients, expand our customers. Already we are talking about delivery at homes for food suppliers and so on. It creates new business networks and opportunities. And we need to think in that way. Many of us who have the businesses can do so. Some of our businesses can't do that, clearly. But new business can come up, and we can, in this environment, still have a certain limited economic activity initially and expand and go upon that. It's a new world with opportunities for us to do well, bearing in mind that we have this pandemic that is threatening us. We have to find a way to live with it as we move forward. And just one last thing I would say, and that has to do, if we control our economy, our social life, our people, and our health facilities can manage any cases of COVID that may be here properly. One big challenge that we have going forward will still have to be when to relax our borders. Because keeping that ring around St. Kitts and Nevis allows us to keep out new cases that can come in from outside. If we can do that and know how to address that, we can really get back to a normal way of living. But we have to manage all of this within the context of this disease, this virus that is threatening us. And so I want to wish all of us a good evening, and that as we come to Monday, we prepare for a new week where we can see how we can adjust to some of these regulations that we've put in to help us in a new dispensation. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney General. That brings us to the end of our questions for today. Thank you for your questions, and I hope that they were adequately and properly answered. I just want to make 2 and 3 announcements. The eye clinic at JNF General Hospital is open for emergencies. Some persons have been asking. So the eye clinic at JNF Hospital is open for emergencies. LEAT extends suspension of passenger services to May 15th, given the current environment. And one of the things that the COVID-19 has brought out is a lot of social and economic inequalities in our societies. It doesn't matter where. It is poorer people who are feeling it, certain people of color feeling it, certain countries where, where there are a lot of slums and lack of access to clean water and so on. It raises issues of hygiene. And while I began by saying that COVID-19 knows no discrimination, and that it is teaching us that we must not discriminate, on the other hand, it is showing a world where people who are more vulnerable and how these people are affected by things like this pandemic and other things, and how perhaps we will become a better world in terms of, bridging the gap with these social and economic inequalities. Tonight on CNN, there will be a program by Don Lemon at 10 p.m., The Color of COVID. We were saying that black people, at one time there was this myth that black people couldn't get COVID. Well, it is quite a myth, because so many black people in the United States are falling like flies. So The Color of COVID, CNN's Don Lemon at 10 p.m. tonight, it would be worth that you tune in, turn your TVs on and have a look at it. I would like to thank Permanent Secretary Ron Dublin Collins for his update on the Utilities and Transport Committee for the NEOC. Also, President of the St. Kitts and Nevis Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Mrs. Giselle Matthews, Superintendent Cromwell Henry, who continues to update us on matters of law enforcement and aspects of the regulations pertaining to the state of the emergency, our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Hazel Laws, our Medical Chief of Staff at the Joseph N. France General Hospital, Dr. Cameron Wilkinson, Mr. Abdias Samuel, the Chair of the COVID-19 National Task Force. I would like to thank the Attorney General and Chairman of the Disaster Mitigation Council, the Honorable Attorney Vincent Byron, and of course as well, always for her support, the Honorable Minister of State responsible for health, the Honorable Wendy Phipps. Also, I want to thank Mrs. Christmas Jacobs, who continues to come every day and to demonstrate her skills of sign language, such an important part of these briefings. Thanks to the media for always tuning in and partnering with us in terms of this fight on COVID-19. Thank you to all of you, and tomorrow we'll be back at 5 p.m. for another daily briefing. Thank you and be safe.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present Team COVID-19. Step into the mic in the studio is Dr. Laws, our beloved CMO, Medical Chief of Staff, Dr. Wilkinson, and Mr. Lesroy Williams. Team COVID-19 on the front line, coming to you in Calypso rhyme. So sit back, relax, and listen to what they have to say and the role they want you to play. Easy.
Early in January this year, our federation woke up in fear because a little virus out there in Wuhan was slowly making its way to our land. They say its name was SARS Corona, and our lives it planned to devour. So we're here to come up quickly with a little plan to save our beautiful nation.
If it's a plan they want, then plan they will get. Because of people's lives we have to protect. Close down the airport and send back them victorious ships so we could focus on this pandemic. Mr. MCS, I'm begging you please, as I pray to God from down on my knees. Now let's get all our hospitals and staff in order to battle this corona.
Well, Madam COO, I hear you loud and clear. We will win this fight, don't worry, don't fear. I'll sound the alarm and get all hands on deck. This war we will win and our people protect. To win this war we must flatten the curve, but don't overwhelm the nurses and doctors. Personal responsibility you must take indeed if we are to succeed.
Cover your mouth, we say cover your nose. This will stop the spread to those who are close. Lock yourself inside during the curfew. Under quarantine, to thine own self be true. Wash from your elbows down to your hands with soap and water. It's a simple plan. If you follow these simple instructions daily, from this virus will soon be free. Easy.
By now I know what you're thinking, but I only assisted with the recording. This song is not my composition, but brought to me by Dr. Wilson.